All right, welcome to today's episode of Words of the Wise. I have Chief Evans from Delavan PD. He has 21 years experience in law enforcement. I'm really excited to have him as a guest. So welcome, Chief Evans. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, I wanted to start with a little bit of background. What is your why? How did you get started in this profession? And what do those 21 years look like for you?
I started law enforcement about 21 years ago that I've been sworn. Prior to that, I was a cadet with a police explorer program that was near the community I grew up in. And law enforcement just seemed to be a profession that really spoke to me in that every day was different. You could help people and face challenges that you had to work through, and to be able to see the impact that you're making on people in the community. So that has been really my main um, driving force of being in the law enforcement field, and why I've been in law enforcement for so long. I started off as a patrolman and worked my way up through to assistant chief. I was assistant chief for 5 years and then became chief of police, and I've been chief of police for about four and a half now.
Amazing. And I know when we talked offline, you started in this passion for helping people even earlier than your law enforcement career. You started off on the EMT side, is that correct?
Yeah, so my service really started in my senior year of high school, and EMT was the first step for me. I did go through one rotation of my license as an EMT. I kind of found that the medical side just wasn't for me. It wasn't the drive that I was looking for, and so that's why I pursued the law enforcement a little bit more. But you know, as you say that, I reflected, and that's kind of where my interaction with trauma began. So I was a just a few months out of high school when I had my first traumatic multi-fatality accident that I was one of the medical professionals on, and it was a big impact. And back that long ago, there were no debriefs, there were no um, talking about what calls have just that you've just gone on. And here I am, 18, fresh out of high school, and it was some younger individuals that were involved in this accident. And as we were sitting there waiting for the coroner, I look over along the curb is my classmates just staring at this open field of this fatal accident. And it was a big impact to me. And so I was dealing with traumatic death before I even really learned how to deal with grieving as a human being.
Mm.
So it's been a very big impact on my entire adult life.
And I can only imagine, like I think about myself at 18 and where I was mentally, and I certainly don't think that I would have been mentally prepared for anything like that young. And we know that, going from being 18 on the EMT side and seeing traumatic events and then entering into a career of law enforcement and continuing to see, critical incidents and traumatic events over a 21-year period has to have some impact on your mental and emotional health over time. How have those things impacted you? And what are some of the things that maybe you used throughout your life that's helped to offload and mitigate some of those things?
Well, as you know, like that many years back, mental health was not really a driving factor in the first responder community. And in fact, it was the best way I can describe is the saying, "Suck it up, Buttercup." you handle a call and you move on to the next one, and you don't really talk about them. And as I progressed through my career, I, since that's the way I started, all I did was pretty much bottle that up. And that built on me for quite a while, because that just wasn't the environment that we were living in at the time. Illinois just passed a law that requires communities that are self-insured. They haven't reached out to all first responders. It's just ones that are self-insured, that now mental health has to be paid for and covered under you know the ones that are self-insured, which that's us making a good step in the right direction of being able to provide resources. But it's not just the mental health side, it's also the physical health side. Um, I I've had two heart attacks. They were 2 weeks apart from being a year. And that was a big wake up call to me.
Mm.
And I have focused more on my physical health. And it was recommended by my doctors to, they understood some of what my job was, and encouraged me to look and see if I could find a professional that could help me just work through some of these big changes of my life with diet and exercise. And I've never really been super overweight or unhealthy. However, the stress of this job, especially in a leadership role in a small community, is even more stressful than those larger communities, because you're kind of it's just you. And so I with COVID, telehealth has become a great resource for finding professionals that best suit your needs. And I was able to find with the help of my insurance company, a telehealth provider that their focus is leadership,
Mm.
um, first responders, and also just general life experiences. And because probably 3 or 4 years before that, I did look, kind of hunt around at different providers in our area, and there really wasn't, since we're in a rural area, we didn't have a lot of providers that were dedicated to our type of, the first responders are really focused on that. Yes, they probably worked with some first responders, but that wasn't a specialty.
Mm.
And through the telehealth, I was able to find uh, a few different places that's their specialty. And first responders, it's a different um, mental feeling, that having someone that's more geared to our profession does help quite a bit. And so by doing that, I'm getting some some of the things that I've struggled with from a leadership perspective, but at the same time, I'm able to start unpacking some of these traumas that I've had for so many years. And I think one of the things we talk about mental health, or just health in general, for our officers, and I don't think there's as much talk also for our leadership.
Mm.
Our leadership are usually our more experienced professionals, and we have to also be talking about that. I mean, there has to be some um, some processing of the things that we've seen over our career. And in moving the direction I did, I really got to, I've expressed mental health or just um, wellness for my guys, or my officers for so long, and um, it was something that I found. How do we provide these resources and encourage our staff to have the best overall health, whether it's physical or mental, without us being willing to jump in that ring as well?
Right.
And that was a big factor for me in making that decision, because I'm telling all these people that they need to focus on work-life balance, their stress, but yet I'm not as good at doing that, because as a leadership position, a lot falls on us, especially in a small agency. I have five sworn full time, and then I have some part time officers that assist covering shifts. But you know, we got to jump in that ring as well. And so as I started going through this, it has been a eye opener for me as well, that I can benefit from what I'm preaching, that I can't just preach it and provide the resources to my people. I need to, be willing to do it myself. And I don't think there's as much discussion about leadership uh, using these resources or finding these resources as well, because we're probably the most stressed out of our entire agencies are the department heads. And especially with the um, the staffing that is currently plaguing our profession, getting harder to fill positions, and those positions are definitely a different generation that they're not looking at careers, they're looking at jobs. So you have a more turnover, you get people coming in and finding that the job isn't for them, because it is a different generation that is joining our workforce. And so having that willingness to go and have that treatment ourselves, I think is a big, big first step in any department.
I agree. And I really appreciate you sharing your story and jumping in the ring. I like that statement a lot of being willing to jump in the ring. My hope is that, we talked a little bit offline about, this podcast and kind of the mission behind it. And my hope is that by us sharing our stories and the things that we've been through, because I have my own personal stories too. Everyone has different things that they go through in their life, and some might be similar and some might be totally different. I know what it's like to shove things down and lock away the key. And I know what that did to me and my mental health and my life, like really blew up for a while. And I don't want people to feel like they have to do that, that they have to suffer alone or in silence. And like you said, rub dirt on it, kid, and like keep going, like I don't want people to have to experience what I did. And I'm from what I hear from you is that you want people to learn from you as well. And the more we can share our stories, the more normal things are, the more accepted things will be, and hopefully the more open people will be to proactively prioritizing their wellness. And I do agree. I think that, by you jumping into the ring and sharing that it does create that culture. and it does make it okay. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm sure anyone who's listening is, appreciative of that too, because I think that the more conversations we can have about wellness, the more positive impact we can have just across the board. One of the things that I've heard is very similar to what you're saying is that there's a real challenge with finding, I'm going to use this in quotes, but culturally competent providers or providers who specialize in working with public safety in the first responder profession. And I know that you said that it was kind of like a process for you to find someone who you felt like understood you and understood your profession and who specialized not only in this, career path, but also in leadership and, how to help you through those things. How do you think we can help to solve that? Or what do you think can be done? Because I know that a lot of people are struggling out there, especially if you're coming from a more rural area or a smaller organization. How do you think that we can, get more culturally competent people in front of you guys? I don't know the answer to that. Is it telehealth? Is it something where it has more of a far reaching? Because I know a lot of chiefs have expressed that.
Yeah, I think telehealth is something that I think is one of the good things that have come out of COVID
Mm.
is being able to have that broader ability to find professionals that, the area that I'm in, there just is not many people. And I did look early on. There's just not people that specialize in this area because we're still working on getting our people to seek the professionals out. And so like in a rural area there may not be too many that have that kind of a background.
Yeah.
So I think to be able to find some that really match the telehealth is something that I think has been, like I said, one of the good things that came out of COVID is being able to have a bigger reach
Yeah.
on finding people that suit you, because you have to find somebody that you can mesh with,
Yeah.
not just because they have treated first responders in the past does not necessarily mean that you're going to work well with them and be able to open up to them. So having that bigger reach, it also opens up the door to being able to find people that you can trust more, because it is a lot of it is about trust. And so just on a side note, we don't have peer support because we're a small agency. We all work together. We all talk to one another, but we don't have a peer support program. And so being able to have those people that you can trust, that can understand, I think telehealth has been a huge um, impact, but that's not for everybody either. I mean, there's some people that need that face to face, and um, just finding the right fit is also just as important as showing up, is also finding someone that is that right fit so you can feel comfortable to share.
And I think too, on that note, it's like, don't be afraid to try multiple people. Like if the first person that you talk to is maybe not that right fit, like don't give up. And it's hard because I think that whenever there's a barrier, and you're like, man, like I really tried and I put in the effort and it just didn't go the way that I wanted it to. And I think that can be discouraging to like have to start over to find someone new. But I would say I have personally gone through many to find people who are a good fit. And I do think that that matters. It matters that, you're spending your time with someone who, like you said, you trust and someone who meshes with your personality and, you feel like they're giving you um, advice that you're receptive to, I think is important. So I would say, to kind of add to that is if you don't find them right away, don't give up because there
Right.
are there are people out there and it's worthwhile to find someone who's a good fit.
Yeah, and there are also some organizations that can offer resources. I know there's an organization in the Chicago area that was started by a police officer that their focus is being able to provide resources. And even if you're not in the Chicago area, they can try to help find um, someone that does fit what it is you're looking for. So just I mean, and that's just one organization. There
Yeah.
are many organizations out there that because this has become a topic and people are starting to take it serious. And so there are some organizations that they may not be the ones that are giving you the treatment, but they're the resources for you. They're the resources to find the the right treatment center people, professionals, to be able to give you what you're looking for or find that fit.
Yeah, and I think too, it's all about sharing. I think that the more we can share resources, the better. So if there are agencies that you know of that are doing it well, or are using a particular provider, like maybe it's something to, talk to each other and try to find, those different resources. Because there are people who, um, I don't say they're gatekeeping, but they may know something that you don't know. So
Right,
extending your community and asking around, I think is helpful too, if you're comfortable doing so,
right,
which
right.
is kind of the key. I know we touched on a few things, and I wanted to kind of circle back to them. So
Okay.
one, talking about leadership and how important it is for leadership to prioritize their own wellness and be able to manage their own stress. And also for leadership to encourage wellness within their organization. Um, I've heard endless stories about how it's lonely at the top and there's really nowhere to go sometimes. It's like you can't really go up when you're
Right.
at the top. And I would imagine, especially in a smaller organization, it'd be hard to go down or maybe even be viewed as inappropriate to do so. And so there have been a lot of conversations, and I don't know if you've heard of this, but there have been a lot of conversations about creating regional peer support teams for executives. Have you heard of this? Is this something that maybe is in the works in Illinois right now?
Right now, I'm not aware of it in Illinois, but I am aware of what you're speaking of. I've had the opportunity to attend the International Chiefs Conference for a few years, and I believe it was in San Diego that I went to a seminar, and it was a fireside chat. It was something that was being done right around Denver in the Colorado area,
Yep.
and that the what I took away from that seminar was very positive. It was that they have found a way to provide that safe space for law enforcement executives, and it has been successful for the folks there in Colorado. And I've kind of talked to some other chiefs around here, but it's one of those things that um, sometimes it's hard to find the right professional to be able to take that lead
Mm.
and mirror off of what some other regional areas are doing. But that is something that I would like to see more of in our community of law enforcement is finding some things for the leadership, because
Mm.
there it can be like you said, it can be lonely at the top. And um especially in a smaller organization, you might not I mean, you can have a deputy chief and you can have some that are really close to your level, But in a small agency like mine, I don't have that. I have my patrolman, and you're right. It's hard to go down to that area. Not that I don't trust them or I don't think the world of them, because they are a great team. But some of the things that are the stressors are things that they that I don't bother them with.
Right. Yeah.
Small town politics,
Like,
you
it's
deal with all
them.
that
No, I'm
stuff.
just kidding. You're like, they're the stress.
Uh,
I'm joking. I'm joking. No, I
I was just trying to
understand
find
that.
a nice way of saying that.
Yeah.
But that is something that having something for executives like that, I think would be very beneficial. But unfortunately, I just don't think it has made its way across the country yet. But
Yeah.
that was a very powerful seminar that I attended, and I did take some feelings away from that seminar.
Good. Yeah. And I know that, Colorado is one of them. I want to say Oregon is another one that's trying to do it. And so I think things take time,
Correct.
and my hope is the same. My hope is that one day this will be something that's all across the US, that, executives feel like they have a support system that, you guys can talk to each other. And, obviously everyone's trained and, and it's
Right.
something that's official. And my hope is that that's something that spreads and, gains momentum in the future.
Yeah.
And I think it will. I think that
Yeah.
when you have people who are doing it and kind of leading the way, sometimes it takes time, to catch on, but I think that that'll grow in popularity and yeah.
Yeah, and for people that are maybe in that area, I believe that the one that I'm speaking of is hosted by the Colorado Chiefs Association. So that would be maybe a resource to reach out to as well. But I believe they're the ones that have that program in place or started that program, and it's been pretty successful for them.
Yeah. No, thank you for that shout out. I think that's important for people to understand what's happening and then, who are those resources to ask questions. I know that, you've mentioned that you have a small agency. You don't have a formal peer support team because of that, because you have, 5 officers. How do you lead and create a culture of wellness within a small organization? And what types of resources do you currently offer? I know that you have some creative things that you've done, so I'd love if you could share how you're creating that culture and how you're providing resources.
Well, for my agency, the focus that I've been able to do is more on the physical wellness, because on a peer support, it's when it is just a small team, it's hard. I've looked at trying to explore like a support, like county-wide or something like that, and it comes with a lot of challenges, and I don't necessarily know if that's one that would work based on my conversations.
Mm.
But the physical side, some of the things I've done is worked with our new superintendent and made it so we could. They've opened up their workout center that they have for their sports teams. It uses a key card system, and it's the same key card system that we have for response to the facility, and they have opened it up to police officers to work out free of charge, and we can go in there 24 hours a day whenever we fits our schedule. And then we also have a fitness organization that's not too far from us that also offer first responder discounts, and it's a little bit of a price break. And their center, they have a indoor pool and some other resources that the school gym's pretty basic, but it gives us some access to something um, than nothing. And I am looking at seeing if there's a way that we can build or accommodate a department gym But things take time, and that's one that, smaller agencies have limited resources, and trying to find the right resources to make some of that happen um, doesn't happen overnight, and I think I have the buy-in from my community leadership, um, but it's still finding where we can do this, where are we going to how are we going to get the equipment and everything like that. So it's something I've been working on, and I do encourage my guys, or my officers to we have a couple good parks, and I encourage them to, on a break, or to go walk the bike path, as we're doing two things. We're not only getting a little bit of um, physical work out by going for a 15-20 minute walk, but we're also checking. We're patrolling at the same time. We're being visible in the community, and so encouraging to do things like that is also something that I've been working on with my staff, because it it's given us not only that visibility but also the benefits on the physical side.
Yeah, and I love that even though you have a small organization, that you're still trying to find creative ways to prioritize wellness. Because I think that you could just as easily say, well, we don't have a gym, so they just don't get to do anything. But saying, hey, like, no, we partnered with the school gym, we were able to at least provide them a safe, secure space to go do that. Or, I encourage them to go get outside, go walk, go move, because we know that there's so much science to support that that also helps with mental health. Get out, do that, have community engagement, go say hi to people, and maybe interact with people in a positive way. So it's not just during a call for service, where maybe someone is having a bad day, So I think that having that mentality of like, I'm going to support this, we're going to find creative ways to try to, at least get the physical part in front of you, and then also encourage the mental side through shared stories. I appreciate that. I I did want to ask you because we talked about, the younger generation, and how do you think you can get younger people to prioritize their wellness proactively?
Well, one thing that I've been finding is that the younger generation, or the newer generation entering the career field, they already have a little bit of that in them.
Mhm.
You've seen a little bit more push towards work-life balances. They enjoy their days off, or they want time off. And so I think the building blocks are there, and just being open with them as to what the options are out there, and be willing to come and talk if that's what they need.
Mhm.
I think is the first steps, but it's all, in my opinion, about encouragement.
Yeah.
If if you encourage it, you can't, just like they say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Just because we're encouraging and even providing certain resources, until they're ready to use those resources, then it's not going to be as effective. And so mostly through encouragement, and that's where also from the leadership standpoint is, we have been through so much as leaders. We've all worked our way through the ranks to get to where we're at. We all have experience under our belt before the gold badge. And so being able to use the examples of what our experiences have been, and just encouragement is the best way, in my opinion, because they need to know what resources are there. and they have to be willing to use them. And that's through encouragement.
I love that. I think that's great. And I do, like, to your point, I think that if people aren't receptive and don't feel like they're allowed to use things, they're not going to. And so by creating that safe space, encouraging them, educating them, then if and when they're ready to grab a hold of them, it's there.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. I have one final question for you, and then I'll let you take the floor if we missed anything. What words of wisdom would you give to someone who's younger in their career? Maybe something you wish you would have known earlier or something that worked for you?
Well, I think one of the things is definitely being open to get some extra support that you need. Um, a lot of us don't want to put burden on our loved ones. And so we tend to bottle things up. And even though our loved ones are there to support, it's difficult to truly release
Mhm.
and let that go unless your significant other may be in another first responder or in the profession or close to that. Um, so that would be the one thing is not to bottle things up, not, you know, not be like me and let it bottle for 20 years. Um, and, be told over and over, maybe you need to talk to somebody. Been, I could say I've never been depressed or anything like that, but it still weighs on you. The things that we see on not necessarily a daily in the small communities, but we see it, um, anything of a traumatic death or anything or traumatic incident as being chief in a small community, I'm on scene. I'm called out. So not only am I getting catching the calls on my shift, I'm catching the calls 24/7. And just for the newer generations to know that it's okay to discuss that you don't have to put on that mask every time and just have that blank um emotional uh feeling and share it with your command, share it with other officers, and then if that's not enough, then professionals, and that's what professionals are there for. I mean, it's no different than us as law enforcement professionals, and so there's so many levels that they can do, and it's whatever they feel comfortable with. But know that if one level's not working, move on to the next one. Just keep going onto those levels until you are able to have that clarity of life and clarity of this job, because there's a lot of people that let things build up and then they act out on the job, and now they're in a disciplinary situation because they let things build up in themselves and um, gained an attitude or whatever the case is on the street, and they now it's affecting them in their job, or they're letting it bottle up and it's affecting them in their relationships or in their private life, whether it's um, in law enforcement, the there's always officers that are disgruntled. Every professional has that, but sometimes it's because of the job. And so having that focus, I think, is very important for our young people.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And you said something in there that I thought was really interesting. and I haven't heard it put this way before, and I don't even know if you meant to say it this way or not, or if my brain just like,
Right.
perceived it this way, but you in law enforcement, you have empathy for people who call you and need your help, who like genuinely need your help, right? And
Right.
you encourage that. Like you want people in your community to come to you when they need help. And so also being okay with you calling for help and like having empathy within yourself to know that like it's okay if you like also need to call out for help and you need to ask someone, to help you out. And I like drew like that like connection when you said that of like if you're empathetic to people who need you, you also have to be empathetic to yourself when you need someone who's a professional. So I appreciate that words of advice. And that's all I have for you. But if there's anything else we missed or anything else you want to add, you have the floor.
Well, I think one thing that I would add is one of the things that I've done for almost my entire career is gone out to Police Week in DC, where they put the names of the fallen on the wall. And unfortunately, I've had to go when some of those names are people I know.
Mm.
Um, I haven't, fortunately, lost anyone in my agency, but we had a surrounding agency that I knew the person quite well, grew up in the same small community I grew up in, um, that was killed in the line. And I also had, right after I started, it was about 11 months after I was sworn in that a family friend of mine who was also in law enforcement was tragically killed on his way home on Thanksgiving. And he was off duty, but stopped to help somebody that had a flat tire and had gone off the road. And he was helping change a flat tire, and he was struck and killed. And so I've gone attended police funerals that I really knew this family quite well, and he grew up in the same small town. So that small town has lost two individuals that were killed in the line of duty. And going to Police Week and going to um, some of these other events that are held across the country for fallen officers, I think is important as well for us to attend, because it's all about supporting each other. And when you are at these large events and you see the support that other law enforcement officers are giving, then it's very impactful. It's very impactful, and I think that's something that every law enforcement officer should attend at least once in their career, because it is just it's the ultimate sacrifice. And that is also kind of transitions into that more officers die each year from suicide than in the line of duty. I believe there's not real good statistics because not a lot of agencies are as open about what has happened in their agency, but it's 2 to 3 times more die from suicide than in the line doing this job. And that is a huge problem that we have in our career field, that if people were more willing to find resources and put themselves out there and get the professionals to help, that we will see those numbers come down, and that'll be less funerals that we have to attend. And it all comes to health. I mean, for me, physical health, having 2 heart attacks, that's something that was a big wake up call for me. And like I said, I've never been completely out of shape but I certainly could have did better over my life. But working third shift for so long, you get some bad habits. And so I think that is one thing that I would want to encourage all law enforcement is take those moments and and reflect on our fallen and preventing more police funerals and the funerals for our brothers and sisters.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate all of your insights. I think that was a great way to close, and I don't want to add anything to that. So, thank you for your time. I
Well,
appreciate that very much.
thank once again, thank you for the invite.
Of course.